Welcome back to Cold Stuff and Chill. That was excessive.
That was a good
But
song.
yeah,
I liked it.
thank you. Welcome back to another week here. We are having our long weekend, so I think we feel a little bit more refreshed than the last couple weeks where we were recording. But yeah, how are you? How's it over there in Ashleytown?
It's good, just working on the dark arts.
Yeah, of course. I mean, what else would you do, right?
Nothing.
Got a 3-day weekend. So I am very proud of this. And Ashley, I've shown you this 800 times already this morning. I got a cricket this weekend. And my first project, I'm going to show it to our folks at home. But it is a jar that says crack rocks in the style of Ray Dunn. And this is really the only reason I ever wanted a cricket is so that I could make cursed objects like this. So, check me in my future merch shop making crack rock jars for you and all your friends. Just kidding. I won't do that. I just did it for my own personal satisfaction. But that's what I've been up to, is making Ray Dunn knockoffs for me to put, as Ashley suggested, which was better than my idea, which was bath salts. She suggested putting actual rock candy in there, which 10 times better than my idea because I don't even like to take baths, but I do like to eat candy. So.
Well, and then you can go outside and be eating your crack rocks out of your crack rock jar, and then when the neighborhood girl gang comes by wearing their little child business suits, then you can be like, what's up, guys, as you're eating it.
Hey, little kids, you want some candy? And their mom just sees me giving them rock candy out of a little crack rock jar. It's beautiful. It's all I ever wanted in my life, so.
I mean, it could be worse.
It could be worse, yeah. I could be like riding around in a van and like having them get in the back seat and going on a trip, if you know what I mean.
Or you could I was thinking more like spraying them with the hoses. They're like walking down the sidewalk.
Oh, yeah. So that's a little less drastic than the kidnapping route, but.
Giving them actual crack.
Yeah, kidnapping them and giving them actual crack cocaine and then just turning them loose in a different neighborhood. All would be great. But also, so a couple episodes ago, I had asked people what their earliest childhood memories are, and I do have a few here. So let me grab my phone so I can read them off. Actually, Ashley, one of them was from your sister.
Oh. She
submitted it on Instagram. I did put a little post out asking people for their earliest childhood memories there, so I'm just going to pull them up. So your sister says her earliest memory, and maybe you can corroborate this, was eating clown ice cream on her 3rd birthday. That was Shelby.
Yeah, from Baskin Robbins, how they do the clown, it's a scoop of ice cream and then the cone on top.
I didn't grow up in a town where there's a Baskin Robbins, but that sounds fantastic, and I wonder if you could still go get that. I'm sure you could.
Yeah, you might have to special order it now, because I wonder if it's
was like a 90s thing.
Yeah.
And then I have another childhood memory, was the first, imagine this being your first childhood memory, is almost drowning at Disney World in the wave pool.
Oh.
Yeah. And then, okay, so yet another one, my friend Caitlin, who goes, hers was taking her first steps in her neighbor's driveway when they lived in Tennessee. So she was a little wee baby, but my favorite by far goes out to Courtney, who I will affectionately refer to as Blortney. But her earliest childhood memory, and I'm sorry, Courtney, if you're listening, because I'm paraphrasing what you told me earlier, but essentially, and she did say that it was okay that I reference her parents because unfortunately they did both pass. So the reason I'm bringing that up is because they won't have the secondhand embarrassment of knowing that the world knows this story now. But essentially her father had quite a large porn collection. And so Courtney, when she was a wee little kid, she said she was about 5 or 6, found a photo somewhere in her dad's stash of a woman in a compromising position with PPs in her face, getting splooged on. It was a porn. It was probably in a Hustler or something. But her parents were having a dinner party that night, and so she comes out into where the dinner party is happening with this photo of this woman, and I just feel like her parents are probably mortified. She was crying for some reason. I can't recall what the reason was, but she was crying. She had this photo of she had porn in her hand as a 5-year-old, and she like walks out to the dinner party with all these adults, and that's her earliest childhood memory. So thanks for those, guys. I do have to say though, drowning in the Disney World wave pool and, you know, Daddy's porn stash probably win the award if we were giving one out for the most traumatizing childhood memory experience.
Yeah, I wonder what the psychology is behind like early childhood memories and like them being traumatizing.
Right.
Like, if there's like a higher chance that your first memory is something like just absolutely horrible.
Mm-hmm. Oh God, I can't imagine like how embarrassed I would be as a parent if my kid walked out of my bedroom with just like a giant porno picture during a dinner party.
Or like a dildo or something.
Yeah. Oh God, her poor parents.
It's like you see like on Reddit and stuff about people who are like, my kid took my dildo to class and was like, oh, this is mommy's headache toy.
Her headache toy. Oh my God. Oh God, that would be mortifying as a parent. I like dread the day that I have children and they can live to just embarrass me in like tiny ways like that. Although you can really, you know, get them back later in life. But man, there was like this meme. Or I guess it wasn't quite a meme. It was like a video or some sort of Facebook post, something, blah, blah. You'll know what I'm talking about, though. Where the kid, they were like trying to, in class, the teacher was like, what does your parent do for work? And so this one kid, they lived in a snowy area and his mom worked at Home Depot. And so I guess his mom had told him a story about how busy it was selling snow shovels at Home Depot like the day or two prior. But the photo that the kid drew very much looked like mom was holding onto a pole on a stage. So like the shovel head was like a square, but it looked like mom was standing on top of the square holding the shovel. And all the people around mom were holding dollar bills because they were fighting over who got to purchase the shovel. But it just looked like mom was a stripper. And so like there wasn't any context given to that photo. So the teacher was just like assuming that the mom was a stripper because it very much looked like mom was a stripper.
I feel like if that were the case and the teacher was like, can we have a discussion? I'd be like, sex work is valid work.
True. Honestly, you'd probably make more money stripping than you would at Home Depot. So like, don't knock it, man.
Yeah.
Depending on where you live. I don't feel like out here in Kansas in middle America, stripping is super lucrative. Unless you're like in a large city. Maybe strippers in Wichita make good money, but not in Bumblefuck. They do not. So no, if you're a stripper in Wichita, let us know how the market is.
Remember when we were in school and they opened up a strip club for like a week in like a warehouse or like an old barn or so? It was like a big Morton building.
I wonder whatever happened to that.
I don't know, man.
Dang, I'm gonna have to maybe do some deep Google research to see what happened to the Macomb strip club, because I do remember that, and it definitely wasn't around long.
Yeah, and it was super shady. It was like literally like a barn building with like a concrete floor.
Did you go?
No.
Oh, I was like,
but
wait,
like,
you have firsthand experience? I need to know.
No, I think I was gonna go the next weekend because I was like, I need to know what this is, like what's going on here.
Yeah.
But then I think the city closed it down after that. They're just like, no, you cannot have a strip club.
Macomb was just not it, man. I see, the thing is, like in a college town like that, I'm sure that a strip club would do pretty well because everyone's there with their parents' money looking to just fucking blow it and have absolutely no fucking regard for, you know, their, what is it, FAFSA money, their student loan money. They're going on spring break, they're throwing it at strippers.
I'll start my story with how do you feel about swimming in lakes?
Okay, so fun fact, not only am I terrified of butterflies and moths, but the idea of swimming in anything deeper than like my waist, I fucking hate. I can't do it. If I can't see my feet, I want no part of it. So the answer to that question is fuck that.
I feel the same way if I can't see the bottom.
Ooh, can I tell you another early childhood memory? I guess it's not super early, but it's kind of on topic of what you just asked me. So I guess I was in middle school and we had gone to Lake Michigan. And so it was my family. So my parents, my siblings, and then each of my siblings and I got to bring a friend. So it was my friend Jessica, who you know. But we had gone out. We had rented a jet ski and an inner tube. And my dad was on Lake Michigan on the jet ski. And then two of us would be on the inner tube at a time, and he'd be pulling us around. I get on the inner tube. My dad is on the jet ski. He's fucking pulling me, going like really super fast, because I think he at the time thought of my siblings, I probably had like the least fear complex. And typically I think that would have been accurate. However, when it comes to water, I am not a strong swimmer, and we were far enough out that like I would not touch. I would just fucking drown. But I'm like holding onto this inner tube, and my legs are kind of like dangling off the back, and I slowly feel my swimsuit bottoms start to creep down. And I'm like yelling and crying, like, Dad, you have to stop. Of course he doesn't hear me. He's on a jet ski. Like, no, you don't hear this screaming child holding onto the inner tube. And I would not let fucking go of this inner tube, because I'm like, I will be damned before I have to tread water out in here and wait for his ass to realize I'm not there and come around to pick me back up. But here I am, my slowly fucking creeping down swimsuit bottoms, just lower and lower until my ass is just out. And I'm like, I'm going to lose my bottoms, and that's going to be way worse than drowning as a teen. So I'm like, I either have to expose my ass to the entire beach of people, or I have to let go and just drown. And at this point, I will let the water take me and just go to my watery grave. I don't give a shit. So I had to like let go. And then finally my dad realizes that I'm just like treading water, and I'm like trying to like hike my bottoms up as I'm treading water, because they're like at my knees at this point. And then he's like, well, why didn't you tell me to stop? I'm like just sobbing. I'm like, Dad, I tried to. But anyway, that's one of my formative memories, was me losing my swimsuit bottoms almost in Lake Michigan and having to tread water. But anyway, sorry, that was a big off topic. Continue. Sorry.
I feel like every Midwest child has a story like that about like tubing, and like just my thing was always like I would be damned if I was coming off, so I held on for dear life. And like people would be like, wow, you're like really strong, like, you know, you hit a couple of big waves. I was like, honestly, it is willpower keeping me on this inner tube at this point.
And I don't think looking back at it, maybe we should have been wearing life jackets as well as doing that. I feel like in the 90s and early 2000s, there just wasn't a lot of safety precautions thought about. But yeah, highly suggest maybe doing a life jacket in these circumstances.
Also, doing the life jacket that has like the little strap that goes in between your legs, so that way it will keep your bottoms on if you're wearing like a bikini.
Yeah, that's an excellent idea. Or just wear a one piece maybe.
So my story is kind of based off of dark water. So deep in the Scottish Highlands, near the city of Inverness, you'll find the dark Loch Ness. Loch Ness is one of the largest and deepest bodies of water in the United Kingdom, reaching depths of nearly 800 feet at some points. So you definitely wouldn't be able to touch.
Nope.
The water is pitch black due to the peaty particulates that are brought in by the rainfall feeding into the lake, which make visibility in the lake especially poor. The lake never freezes, but remains a cool 41 degrees year-round, 41 degrees Fahrenheit, about 6 degrees Celsius. And it also sits on a huge valley carved by glaciers during the last ice age, and also on top the Great Glen Fault. Bullskin House, near the lake, was home to our boy Aleister Crowley. And last but not least, Loch Ness is also home, of course, to the famous Nessie, or the Loch Ness Monster.
Bum, bum, bum.
So, sightings of Nessie go back over 1,500 years, where the local pagan tribe called the Picts carved images of a strange aquatic creature onto stones near the lake. This creature in the photos, or well, not photos, in the carvings, rather, kind of looks like a caricature to me of a greyhound with like really long ears and a tail and legs, and a really long snoot. The earliest written reference to Nessie was in the biography of St. Columba, where in 565 AD, St. Columba was on a trip to visit the king of Inverness, and on his way to the castle, he stopped by the Loch Ness because he heard that there was an alleged monster that was just straight up mauling and murdering these pagans. So he sent actually one of his buddies out as bait, and when Nessie appeared to fully murk the dude, St. Columba was like, yo, Nessie, get your ass back in the lake, so help me God. And allegedly Nessie like stopped in his tracks and like froze and then like dove back deep into the water. And the pagans were like, oh, this is great, like this isn't gonna murder us anymore. Allegedly, like, Nessie never hurt another human after that. Also, fun fact, St. Columba is also known for founding the abbey on the Isle of Iona, which is where Netta Fornario, where she was visiting when she died. So he clearly had some sort of penchant for gentrifying like nice, spiritually balanced pagan places.
So I feel like there's got to be something to the land around Loch Ness, because not only obviously are we talking about Nessie, but then the Aleister Crowley thing and now the Netta thing. Like, it's got to be one of those places. I know they always say, like, Sedona, Arizona has, like, this, like, big pull to it for fucking wacky shit. I wonder if there's a similar thing going on here.
Probably. I mean, Scotland and, like, Ireland are kind of both like that.
Yeah.
Where they're just, like, mystically.
You know what? This is, like, you really did pick the perfect topic, because there's so many things, and you guys will hear this later, that are going to tie into this. So this is wonderful. Keep going.
Sightings continued throughout history, and many yarns had been spun about Nessie on a more local level, but Nessie actually gained worldwide attention in April of 1933 when an article was published in the Inverness Courier, the local newspaper, that was written by Alex Campbell, the water bailiff for Loch Ness, which I guess is like their version of a game warden. I don't know. If you know, then I guess comment on our Instagram or DM us on our Instagram. But he was also a part-time journalist. So his article detailed a story about a large beast or whale-like fish that locals had spotted rolling around in the water. And this is the article that actually christened Nessie as a monster. Later, eyewitness testimonies around the time would describe Nessie as the nearest approach to a dragon or prehistoric animal that they had ever seen, looking like a cross between a seal and a plesiosaur, or even looking like a salamander. Mainly, they detail that Nessie had a long, narrow, wavy neck with a small head, having a fairly large body, having stubby legs or fins, and that the creature's movement and swimming behavior was like that of an otter. So it was like rolling and like very slinky.
I wonder if the people that created Pokemon modeled Lapras after Loch Ness Monster.
Probably.
Do you know which one that is?
Yeah.
I'm sure you do, yeah. If you're listening and you don't know what that is, Google it.
While there have been many sightings of Nessie, there's actually very little physical evidence that Nessie exists, which I'm only going to get into the more notable evidence, whether hoax or real, because there's like a lot of photos that really just look like driftwood, and people are like, this is Nessie. Mm-hmm. And then there's also a lot of claims of people having like sonar evidence, but they didn't actually document it. It's just like they came back to shore and were like, ah, yes, we saw on the sonar that there was a large mass. So the most famous and first known photograph of Nessie, known as the surgeon's photograph, is a photo supposedly detailing Nessie's neck, head, and back rising out of the water. And this was taken by a London gynecologist named Robert Kenneth Wilson, which, what a gynecologist is doing trying to like hunt monsters, I don't know. Maybe it's just this fun like weekend activity. Yeah. But this blurry image for many remained irrefutable proof that Nessie existed for nearly 60 years. However, in the 90s, it was revealed that the creature in the photograph was actually a modified toy submarine created by Christian Sperling and some friends. And this contraption was meant to be sort of a prank on all the townsfolk after the first few Nessie sightings. And these dudes, like, they created that out of, like, art supplies, basically, and a toy submarine from Woolworths. And they only got to play with it a little bit before the water bailiff came up. They, like, heard him approaching, and so they sunk it, and they're like, yeah, it's probably still floating at the bottom of the loch to this day. Around this time, there's also an incident where footprints of Nessie were found, but researchers determined that it was hippopotamus footprints.
Wait, in Scotland?
Specifically, 1 foot of a hippo in an alternating pattern that appeared to be stuffed because it was, like, slightly shrunk.
Oh, that
so it was, like...
sense.
No, it wasn't like a normal gait of a hippo. It was like the one, like the left front leg of a hippo.
There wasn't like an escaped hippo from the zoo. It was literally someone like,
yeah,
making okay, that makes more sense.
In 1960, an aeronautical engineer, Tim Dinsdale, filmed at this point one of the most conclusive pieces of evidence, which was a short film of a hump that left a wake, and Dinsdale described it as a reddish with a blotch on the side. Researchers at the time determined that it was probably animate, but still might be a boat. However, in 1993, Discovery Communications produced a documentary about the Loch Ness, where they enhanced Dinsdale's film and determined that the film was legit and an animal, but they couldn't determine what the animal was. In 1977, a magician, Anthony Doc Shields, claimed that he summoned Nessie out of the water, and that it wasn't a plesiosaur at all. But instead that it was an elephant squid, and the neck and head of the creature was really the squid's trunk, and that he had got a photo of it. And I'm just going to say it, but the photo that he took straight up just looks like a dick.
I'm looking up what an elephant squid looks like right now. Oh, wait, why is it kind of cute?
Oh, wait, that is adorable. Also, that looks like small, though.
But would that be like a native species to Loch Ness, you think? That elephant squid?
I think they're more like deep water.
Mm.
In 1987, a scientific expedition called Operation Deep Scan was conducted where 24 boats, packed to the gills with echo sounding equipment, created basically a chain across the loch and simultaneously set out acoustic waves to try to disprove Nessie once and for all. Instead of nothing, which is what they expected, what they got was documented sonar of a large unidentified object of unusual size, strength, and speed. It was speculated to be a group of seals or a school of fish, but one expert, Daryl Lowrance, said, "There's something here that we don't understand, and there's something that's larger than a fish, maybe some species that hasn't been detected before. I don't know." In 2003, a BBC-funded search utilizing 600 sonar beams and satellite tracking identified a small buoy in the loch, but that was about it. And according to the disappointed scientists, seemingly they had disproved Nessie once and for all. However, in 2014, a satellite image on Apple Maps captured what appeared to be a large creature, 98 feet or 30 meters long, swimming just below the surface of the lake. Explanations for this are like kind of vague, and they claim that it likely was just the wake of a boat or seal ripples or floating wood. However, that image straight up just looks like a giant fish. Like, to me, it looks like a giant walleye.
I've got to look this up.
Yeah.
Ooh,
That one's
why is
kind
it
of
so
scary
big?
because you're like, shit, that's big. It's like some Lake Placid shit.
yeah. Yeah, it's fucking huge, man. Ew, thanks. Okay, I hate it. Like, that's a big bitch.
Anyways, so there's even more evidence. In 2018, a DNA survey of the lake was conducted looking for unusual DNA that could explain the Nessie sightings. They didn't find significant DNA evidence of sharks, sturgeons, catfish, otters, whales, seals, or reptiles. However, there was a fuck ton, emphasis on the fuck, and ton of eel DNA. Like an actual disgusting amount of eel DNA. So they basically said there was a possibility that there were unusually big eels in the lake because they didn't actually catch any smaller eels, or that it might just be like a large swarm of smaller eels. But again, they couldn't confirm it because they hadn't caught any eels at all.
So, okay, when you say they're taking
Yes.
DNA, do you mean like, because I'm picturing there's just like a shitload of, I guess, animal splooge in the water
Well,
that they're taking the DNA from?
I mean, if you think about it, a lot of these species are like breathing in water and breathing out water. So I think they're just doing like DNA sequencing to see if there was any cells from these animals.
Okay, that's like way less disgusting than what I was picturing. So I'm gonna go with that scientific Ashley theory because that's way less disgusting.
Also, like a lot of them secrete mucus and stuff, so they're probably looking for like that more. That's what I was thinking. But like it was a lot.
Okay.
There's a lot of evidence of eels in the lake, but like they didn't really catch any. And there's like some other fish species in there, but like I think the eel DNA pretty much covered everything up. So I don't know if they like dropped their DNA. I don't exactly know how they pulled the DNA, but like I wonder if they just dropped it into like an eel nest and then they're like, "Ah, yes, this lake is 100% eels."
Like a rat king, but with eels.
So there are several explanations as to what Nessie might be, and logical, some not so logical. So let's crack on to that. First is that people just were seeing a big flock of birds taking off, and they're just like misidentifying that. Another, and this is probably the most plausible explanation, is that there are eels of unusual size in the lake, or large schools of smaller eels, due to the massive amount of DNA evidence. Along with the eyewitness testimony, a lot of the eyewitness testimony explains that Nessie was like rolling around, and if you've ever seen eels move in the water, they kind of, when they get, especially when they get like pissed or agitated, they like roll kind of like an otter in a very similar way. So I'd say that this is a pretty good theory, and it might just be like a really big eel, like a big one, and maybe just like elusive and kind of hard to find. Also, there is evidence of large eels in other lochs around the area. There's also documentation, like ancient documentation of these. So, and some people think, specifically with the surgeon's photograph and sightings kind of based off of that, that Nessie was actually a misidentified elephant that was swimming in the loch. This Speculation is that traveling circuses may have allowed their elephants to bathe in the loch, and that the head and neck of the creature was actually the trunk of the elephant, and like the top of the head and the back was what they perceived to be the body. I think that's one of the more popular ones because it was like around a very specific time in the 30s that sightings were pretty high. So zoologist and angler Jeremy Wade, star of the perennial favorite River Monsters, thinks that the best explanation for the Loch Ness Monster is that it's actually a Greenland shark or series of sharks that had entered the loch during a time of flooding. Because for a long time, this actually wasn't accessible by channel or anything. It was kind of a landlocked lake, or maybe smaller creeks or rivers. But he basically said that the Greenland shark had entered the loch and that these types of sharks can survive in freshwater provided enough food. His evidence for this theory that other depictions of similarly described monsters in the area show similarities to the Greenland shark. So he's like, you know, because they're seeing it over here and this looks like a Greenland shark, then it might be a Greenland shark that's in the Loch Ness. He doesn't actually catch a Greenland shark in the loch. He actually just goes somewhere else and catches it. So it's not like he has hard evidence of that. He just has speculative evidence. But he's also amazing, so I might believe that.
I stand.
However, many people think that it is actually an evolved plesiosaur or a family of plesiosaurs due to the fact that it looks exactly like a plesiosaur in many descriptions. Some explanations for this theory point out that it might have been caught in the lake during the last mass extinction event and didn't actually go extinct, and that this family of plesiosaurs has just been living in this lake. Some people think that there's undocumented caves or tunnels under the loch, or maybe like something like the earth is hollow, and that deep down there's some sort of volcanic vent that is keeping the plesiosaurs warm enough, and they really just come out into the loch to hunt. Other speculation is that the access to tunnels or whatever might be camouflaged by plants because it is so deep. That's why nobody's ever noticed these tunnels or anything. But there's not actually like hard physical evidence. That's a lot of speculation.
Right.
Theories along the vein that is a plesiosaur suggest that there actually might be some kind of time and space wormhole or portal in the Loch Ness. That brings prehistoric creatures to the loch at inconvenient times, which would explain why some studies have determined that there is a scientific impossibility of something of that size living in the lake. Kind of tying into this theory, some people claim that Nessie is an alien life form from another planet that's either just checking in, is some sort of a guard dog for a Stargate that like cases out the area to make sure that ships can come through, or is actually an unidentified alien spacecraft. More boringly, Nessie has also been claimed to be decomposing logs that are so coated in resin, while it's decomposing, it can't actually like vent gases, so the gases build up underneath this like shell of resin, and then at some point it cracks and the gases propel the log along. Nessie is also sometimes speculated to be a Wells catfish, a seal or colony of seals, otters, swimming deer, swans or other waterfowl, natural water oscillations, animals or logs being distorted by optical effects surrounding atmospheric refraction, seismic gas bubbles, or earthquakes causing ripples and disruptions. A similar monster has actually been reported for centuries in the U.S.'s Lake Champlain, located in the Adirondack Mountains. Indigenous people claim that a large horned serpent or giant snake called the Gitaskag inhabited the lake, or even warned the French explorers not to disturb the monster, or else they'd bring bad luck upon themselves. Of course, Europeans, being the colonizing bastards they are, did disturb the area, and later in 1609, Samuel de Champlain, who the lake is actually named after, he reports seeing many large fish, maybe 8 to 10 feet long, and the description that he gave sounds like a long-nosed gar or a gar pike, which is a very likely candidate for the monster that the indigenous people had seen. Because I don't know if you've ever seen a gar, but it's fucking scary. So, another dude, Captain Crumb, claimed to have sighted an enormous 187-foot monster with 3 teeth, eyes the color of peeled onions, a belt of red around its neck with a white star on its forehead, which a white star, not like a 5-point star. The star is actually the name of a marking found on horses usually, where it's like a diamond or like a small white circle on their forehead. And fun fact, my horse actually has a very small white star on her forehead that is shaped like a meat cleaver.
Aw, way to go, Billy.
Anyways, most famously about Champ, as the monster came to be known, P.T. Barnum actually offered a reward for anyone that would bring him the skin of the monster or the monster itself, but obviously nobody ever could come up with that. A few more bits of evidence on Champ. While on vacation in 1977, Sandra Mancy took a grainy color photo of something that she claimed was Champ, but researchers determined was likely just a weirdly shaped log because the area that she had taken the photo in was way too shallow for any sort of creature, let alone a giant prehistoric plesiosaur. So that was discounted. And in 2005, two fishermen got a video of something that appeared to be a plesiosaur type animal. And even though two retired FBI forensic image analysts determined that the footage itself was original and unaltered, they agreed that they couldn't determine whether it was anime or not. So, kind of a bummer. One unique thing, though, about Lake Champlain that I don't know that they've studied at Loch Ness or if they even can because it's so heavy with, like, silt, is that there are sounds permeating the lake similar to the sounds that beluga whales or dolphins make, even though neither of those animals have been documented living in that lake. Now, while many of the same theories apply to Champ, there are more real-life creepy-looking fish, like the gar, that inhabit these waters, so that is kind of a reasonable explanation for these sightings. However, some theorists can't be dissuaded by logic, so they say that there's like a wormhole tunnels or something that connects Lake Champlain to the Loch Ness, and that Champ is basically Nessie, and that, you know, when it's not in Loch Ness, it's in Lake Champlain, or there might be other lakes where it's at. That's the running theory on that for our conspiracy theorists aficionados. But regardless of whether Nessie and Champ are ancient dinosaurs floating through wormholes, eels, gars, or just bits of driftwood, they both have had like a tremendous impact on tourism to their respective areas. And even though they're not real, they create, you know, a source of revenue for some of these areas and kind of a source of like pride and inspiration for a lot of people. So can't really say that they are that bad unless they are actually just man-eating giant fish.
Which we hate. Ashley's story actually has some great tie-ins to what I'm going to talk about today, and that is the Hollow Earth theory. Now, okay, so recently there's been like all of that UFO talk because, you know, like that whole document thing's gonna get put out in June, which by the time this comes out will have happened. However, there is this one video in particular, and I know that I referenced it, I think it was either last week or the week before, where that alien ship like lands on the ocean and just like sinks in and it goes like into the abyss. And that's why I picked this, because I have like not been, obviously I'm talking about it again, I'm fixated on that video in particular, and I just like need to know if that video is real, where the fuck was that spaceship going? Where was it going? And so then I was like doing some fucking, I call it research, but really it's just me going on a fucking rabbit hole and like just of nonsense. Really, it's this whole story, guys. Just know that like I appreciate science. I know the science is probably accurate and that this theory is 100% bullshit. But what if it's not? And what if the alien did go into the Hollow Earth? And so I went down this rabbit hole, and then I came to this crazy conclusion that maybe the final destination for this alien was not the ocean floor. There wasn't a base on the ocean floor, but maybe, much like Nessie going into the tunnels, or like the wormholes that people think that Nessie was going in and out of, maybe they were actually trying to like find or land or go into this hole in the ocean floor and then go into the Hollow Earth to go to their alien society. So that, my friends, is what got me looking into Hollow Earth theory. So really, we're not talking about aliens per se today. We're going to talk about the Hollow Earth, but also maybe aliens, but not aliens from out of this world, aliens from this planet, specifically from the inside of our planet. So side note, you did see that video, right? So this isn't like a totally mindless ramble. Okay.
No, that was last week.
Okay, what's your take? Do you think it's real? Do you think it's fake?
Oh yeah, I believe in aliens. Yeah.
Okay, I definitely believe in aliens as well.
For like frame of reference for all of our listeners, I think it was Wednesday night. Devin texted me and she said, "I am on this rabbit hole of Hollow Earth theories, and I literally had not heard from her since. So that's how deep in a wormhole that she was.
To be fair, my parents came into town to visit, and that was mostly why I didn't respond, but also in the time where my parents were sleeping and I was by myself, I was on the Hollow Earth subreddit. So I've had quite the week, and I feel like I've gone crazy and my brain is just mush and I don't know what to believe anymore, except for like I'm firmly grasping to reality and trying to force myself to still believe that the earth is what we were taught, and that it is the crust, mantle, and core. But I just don't know anymore. But I do know because I don't want to say the hollow earth is real because I don't want to be fucking crazy.
But also, like, what we were taught in school has also not always been right. And I'm not just talking about
Right.
science, I'm talking about, like, history, everything,
Mm-hmm.
math.
We get what the government deems is worthy of teaching children, not necessarily what is always the most accurate of truths. Um, and this doesn't just go for science. If you read an American history book, and it would be any country, would be a skewed history book of whatever world events they wanted to highlight and not highlight. But it's not always going to be the most accurate, so you kind of have to go out and do your own research here.
Or even
But
math, like Common Core math now is
mm-hmm,
what they're teaching. And, like, honestly, I feel like I would have done better on Common Core math, but because to me, it does make more sense. But a lot of people are not happy with the way that math is taught because
mm-hmm,
it's not the way that it is taught when you go to get like a mathematics degree. So kids
mm-hmm.
are learning this Common Core shit, and then they're like, I, for some ungodly reason, want to become a math major. And then they're like, now we have to reteach you in the way that
Mm-hmm.
has always been taught.
And girl, I went down a rabbit hole with this because guess what I did this week
Math.
of my own volition? I did math for this story to get some context here. So, okay, again, I just want to make it clear this is a conspiracy theory. Don't take this podcast as fact, and please, please don't tell people that I'm crazy and actually believe these things because, like, it's more than anything. Okay, I'm going to subscribe still to the theory that it's like crust, mantle, core, magma, and then at the very middle is a big iron ball, allegedly. But also, just take it all in. Take in Hollow Earth theory and make your own thoughts and theories.
But
It's a
that
little
big
bit
metal ball
crazy.
could be a spaceship.
That big metal ball could be a spaceship, or it could be a big hollow hole where people live. So, anyway, now that I went on a rant about how this is a conspiracy theory and how I don't, aka how I maybe do just a little bit, but don't believe in this. So, the basic of this theory is that the earth is hollow, and then inside of the earth, there's like this habitable world complete with like oceans and mountains, and it's actually its own source of light. And then within this world, there are living humanoids and societies that are like way more advanced than ours. And allegedly, there are entrances to this world at both of the poles, in the Himalayas, and pretty much if there's like a big cavern or cave system around the world, it's pretty much speculated that if you keep going deeper and deeper into these caverns and caves, eventually you will get to the hollow center earth world. I am going to get into like the sciencey bit of this of like how theoretically you could, explain this, but first we're going to do like a little bit of an anthropology lesson here. So, there's actually tons and tons and tons of ancient civilizations that like mention this theory in their folklore. And so when I say tons, it's not like just people from Europe or just people from South America. We're talking like globally. This is a theory that has existed forever among different groups. So it's kind of weird to reason like how all these different people kind of came to the same conclusion, which is why it fucks me up to think about a little bit because unless the aliens really were coming from the center of the planet, how did they come up with these theories? We don't know. So, that being said, now that I sound like a full crazy person, I'm going to give you some examples of this. So, the Makushi tribes, they're from parts of the Amazon. They said that there was this huge network of tunnels that take like 13 to 15 days to travel through, and that it connected our world to chambers located under the surface. And it said that these chambers, there are giants that live there that are protectors of the earth, essentially. So then there's lore from the Hopi tribes of North America, and they say that their ancestors actually emerged from the underground shelter after a flood destroyed the third world, whatever that is. And they believe that their ancestors came from that underground world, and they specifically reference them having emerged from the Grand Canyon, and also mention like mysterious ant-like gods and flying shields within this inner world. So we like the list goes on, and guys, I'm sorry if you're going to get bored by this, but I'm just going to give you, like I said, we're having a full out history anthropology lesson here. So, moving on to a different culture, the ancient Greeks. There were caverns where they lived, which allegedly were entrances leading to the quote unquote underworld. So, in the Mesopotamian region, actually, there's a story of a man who traveled through the darkness of a tunnel in a mountain and then entered through this tunnel. He entered into like a subterranean garden. So, allegedly, he made it to, the hollow world, which is what I'm going to call it from here on out. We're going to call it the hollow world because that's a lot easier to say it that way. So, moving on to yet another Carmen Sandiego, where in the world are you group of people. In Celtic mythology, there's a legend of a cave known as Ireland's Gates to Hell. And from there, according to legend, strange creatures would emerge and then be seen on the surface of the earth. And actually, there's stories of like medieval knights and saints who went on pilgrimages to these caves. One in particular located on Station Island in Ireland, and they made that journey to the inside of the earth. And then in Northern Ireland, there's a myth that says these tunnels lead to an underground land called, and again, sorry people for the potentially butchered pronunciation, but they went to an underground land of Thua de Dunan. Thua de Dunan is what I think it is. Anyway, the story goes that the group of people emerged from those tunnels, and from that group of people that came from the hollow earth that, like I said, they traveled through those tunnels, whatever, they actually are the ones that introduced Druidism to Ireland. And then after they introduced this, pagan religion, they went back underground. So this like magical, mystical people came from the caves. This is such like a Lord of the Rings story to me. Like they just traveled through the cave and then they gave them the magic knowledge and then disappeared, fucked off back into the hollow earth. So again,
side note, this may need to be cut if this is something you're going to talk about. But like, does Stonehenge or something have anything to do with it, or?
So we won't cut that because that's actually an interesting point. I didn't include it in my notes, but there are theories that those like both like the pyramids and Stonehenge, all these like weird ancient marvels of the world were actually points in which these civilizations emerged and then built up these like, big ass fucking monuments like that really humans would have had a hard time of doing. But allegedly a lot of these stories say that these people are like at least 12 foot in stature. So really they're considered to be giants and they have like advanced technology. So again, like with Stonehenge, with the pyramids, there's a few others around the world that are just like really kind of a marvel of, engineering, right? That they were constructed by these inner world aliens. And actually, I believe there is a theory too. I didn't include it because it was kind of hard to like find the research that would even support that or like any sort of like firsthand stories. But there's a theory that the pyramids of Giza, underneath of the pyramids sits an entrance to the hollow earth. So again, like I said, this is global, man.
There's a lot of theories that there's like an entrance to some sort of underground cavern system and with some evidence underneath like the Sphinx.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they were starting to research that, and then Dr. Zahi Hawass, who used to be like the head of antiquities for Egypt, like shortly after they found out he was like selling antiquities, so I think that excavation got cut off. Yeah. And then also like all the stuff that's kind of happening in the Middle East, I think they were like, maybe this is not the most important thing. So
really like it's seemingly most cultures, if you go far back enough, have like stories or theories about these like otherworldly beings coming, either from these caves or, from another world, as they would put it, and, either imparting on them some sort of like wisdom or religion like they did in Ireland, or like helping them to build the pyramids or to build Stonehenge. So again, that list just fucking goes on, and there's similar stories from Mexico, Germany. Like, there's big references to it in the Hindu religion, and like even the idea of Christian hell being underground is thought to have come from this same theory that, you know, these otherworldly creatures would descend from these cave and tunnel systems. There was also like a handful of scientists in the Middle Ages that did support this theory that the Earth was hollow. So, I mean, take that for what you will. Again, science wasn't like super advanced at that point. So I don't know if you want to take their research as like legitimate or not, given that we have like a lot more advanced techniques to determine like what is under there now. But the truth is we don't really know. We've only ever been able to drill to depths of 8 miles beneath the surface. So, I mean, that's like peanuts when you think about the size of the Earth. Like 8 miles is nothing. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about this more modern dude's take on the whole thing, because obviously we have a more like detailed account of what, you know, he was up to. So this guy's name was Admiral Richard Byrd. And he was actually like a pretty prolific explorer in, you know, the World War I, World War II era. And he's like one of the biggest names in polar exploration pretty much like ever. And so he was actually awarded medals of honor by the United States government for his exploration in the name of the United States. Like, he had a pretty good, basically a pretty legit resume. And this guy, Byrd, he referred to Antarctica as the land of everlasting mystery. And then about the North Pole, he had said that he would like to see the land past the North Pole. It is the center of the great unknown. So, as the story goes, Byrd actually had found an entrance to the Hollow Earth on one of his flights over the North Pole. So, in a journal entry from this particular flight expedition, he apparently wrote about having entered actually into the Hollow Earth interior along with a couple others on this flight with him, and then they traveled nearly 2,000 miles over mountains, over open lakes, waterways, green vegetation, animal life, like as if it were on the surface of our planet. And that despite having entered this hollow earth from a North Pole, the temperature outside the plane after having entered this cavern essentially was 74 degrees. And so he even claimed that in there he saw extinct species like woolly mammoths. So maybe Nessie also lived in there, and she was going through the tunnel systems back and forth from Hollow Earth to surface Earth. Upon flying into this hole in the North Pole, his airplane actually was welcomed by what he said was extremely advanced machines and technology. And then his hosts informed him that he had actually been allowed to enter this Hollow Earth. They call it Agartha, because he had a high moral and ethical status. So I guess he was granted entrance because he was like a cool dude, essentially, is what it boiled down to. And so the people in this Agartha land, they claimed that they were the protectors of planet Earth, which kind of harkens back to that story from those tribes where the giants lived underground and were the protectors of the Earth. After this alleged visit, Byrd and his crew, they are guided back to the outer area of Earth. So that was like during his, I believe, first North Pole expedition in like 1925-ish. And then he went on another government-issued exploration of the poles to Antarctica. So we're at the South Pole now, and this is in 1947. So this operation is actually called Operation High Jump. And so this whole thing has been kind of a touchy subject among UFO conspiracy theorists, because they claim it was actually a covert U.S. Army project made to control supposed secret underground Nazi establishments in Antarctica. And so they were trying to catch German-powered spaceship prototypes, essentially, that were being built in Antarctica. The government claims, obviously, that's not what they were doing. They said it was more of like an exploration thing just to see what was down there. Kind of like a research trip. And so, like, this doesn't have a ton to do with Hollow Earth, but I have a hard time passing up an opportunity to speak about a Nazi conspiracy if it relates to something, so that's what I'm going to do for a second. So, there's a legend among people in the know that Adolf Hitler did not die, by suicide in 1945, as we all suspect. But instead, he fled to Argentina, and then from Argentina, he fled to a secret SS base that was located under the ice in Antarctica. And this was at some point in the early 1950s, where he then resumed his passion as a painter. It's also theorized that the Nazis, in search of the perfect race, which, quote unquote, like, please don't take this as my words, this is just like the justification that's given for why the Nazis were like exploring the South Pole, but they were looking for, quote unquote, the perfect race, and were looking for the entrance to this inside world, into the hollow earth, as it was believed that the inhabitants there were like god tier human specimens. So again, keep in mind they were like very tall. A lot of descriptions of them too, they say they have very beautiful features, essentially. So, you know, the Nazis were Nazis, and they wanted to like find beautiful people, quote unquote beautiful to them, I guess is what I should say, because if you ask me, anyone that claims to be a Nazi nowadays is ass ugly. Inbred, ass ugly, probably in prison somewhere. But anyway, Nazis were down there. They were looking for the entrance to the hollow earth to find these like beautiful people. And according to this account of Operation High Jump, the conspiracy theorists think that this operation was actually organized in order to erase the Nazi presence at the South Pole, and not as an exploratory research mission. Anyway, so that's how the Nazis tie into our story. But anyway, so like Operation High Jump, like this thing was armed like to the gods, dog. Like they brought a lot of shit for what should have been just a research mission. So like they sent over 40 ships. They had aircraft carriers, they had seaplanes, submarines, those giant icebreaker ships that like usually I believe are for shipping vessels to like crack out the ice to like get, you know, ship goods back and forth from places like Russia, I guess. Really, it was kind of excessive for what they were basically marketing again as a research mission. So it seemed to the public and now to conspiracy theorists that it was more of a military thing than just like an innocent exploration. So this kind of like adds fuel to that fire, that like what were they looking for, or what were they hiding, or what did the Nazis know that we wanted to go, you know, take part in. So back to Admiral Byrd, who was again a big part of both that North Pole flight and this Operation High Jump. After his findings on both of these missions, Admiral Byrd explained that the North and South Poles are just two of several openings into the center of the Earth. However, of course, you know, this is a conspiracy theory. The government is, quote unquote, hiding this info from us, because in Byrd's journal, he writes this, and this is his entry from March 11th of 1947. And it goes, "I have just attended a staff meeting at the Pentagon. I have stated fully my discovery and the message from the master. All is duly recorded. The president has been advised. I am now detained for several hours, 6 hours, 39 minutes to be exact. I am interviewed intently by top security forces and a medical team. It was an ordeal. I am placed under strict control via the national security provisions of this United States of America, and I am ordered to remain silent in regard to all that I have learned on the behalf of humanity. Incredible. I am reminded that I am a military man and must obey orders." So that was, again, his journal entry. So it seems to me like he found something that they don't want us to know about. So before we get excited about this, though, it's worth pointing out that Byrd's journal wasn't actually published or distributed until after his death. So the contents are contested like a lot. So I guess his nephew, I believe it was his nephew, discovered his journal and then upon his death published it, so that it could very well be the case that really this is just his nephew's cash grab attempt. Because Admiral Byrd, at this point, he was like the real life Indiana Jones if you were in the United States. Like he would have been a bestseller if he had published his journal. And I think probably more realistically, the nephew either wrote or embellished upon his journals and then published it as, you know, some sort of novel type thing. He wanted money is what I'm saying here. So unfortunately, that's not like nearly as fun as pretending it's real. So we're going to...
And I could also see where, like, maybe they did think that there were Nazis at the South Pole, and then they, like, armed themselves to the teeth to go on this expedition and go hunt out the Nazis, and then we're like, there's no Nazis here. And
Mm-hmm.
then they like pulled everybody in and were like, we're not going to speak of this because this is
Yeah.
a major like cost to the US. And
Right.
at
A
that
huge
point,
waste.
yeah, a huge waste of money, huge waste of time. And like, especially after World War II, when we were still just like trying to get back on our feet from the Great Depression and like
Yeah.
just trying to like reestablish ourselves as like a, a country, like for them to be like, yeah, so we spent at that point probably hundreds of thousands if not millions of dollars to send all these people down to the South Pole
Mm-hmm.
to hunt like
Hunt Nazis, and all you find are fucking Arctic penguins. Like
yeah
that's
like
it.
maybe some leopard seals or something, or I don't
Maybe
even know if
that's
they're down
the
there.
penguins are the master race. Maybe that's like what we all just need to become aware of, is that the penguins are actually supposed to be ruling the planet, and the Nazis, maybe they were onto that. So they went to the
I
South Pole.
mean, haven't you ever seen what's the one animal movie,
March of the
Madagascar?
Penguins? Oh,
No,
Madagascar. Yeah.
I mean those penguins were awfully sus.
Yeah, that's true. They were up to something, and it's probably because they were all Nazis. Nazi penguins aside, there's actually some interesting like scientific theories that suggest that like the Hollow Earth thing could be legit, or explain even like how it might be like feasibly possible for someone to come to that conclusion. So like a decade ago, again, I don't know the exact years on this, it could be longer ago, but anyway, some seismologists, so they're the ones that like record the movements of like the tectonic plates, or like after an earthquake, yada yada. So they claim that they detected movement under the Earth's crust that was more than 400 miles deep, that was similar to the pattern of the ocean waves on the surface of the planet. So they like sent down their little beep beep radar down at the ground 400 miles, and at that point they were picking up, the recorded, I don't know how, it's not a sound, it'd be like a little, graph that is wiggly. And so that wiggly graph was similar to the wiggly graphs of the ocean's waves. So to receive that, like, you have to think, if there is water underneath the surface of the earth, it would have to be a pretty massive body of water, because if it's just like a random lake or pond or a pocket of water, you're not going to get wave action like you do on an ocean, or it would even like be a Great Lake or something. It would have to be a very large body of water is what I'm getting at, to have that sort of movement. So like Great Lake size or bigger. Also, like if you think about our atmosphere, it's only 22 miles high. So if there was a hollow earth, you could feasibly have a setup that's got like a vast expanse of sky above you, despite being in the middle of Earth, just based on the size of the planet. And here's where I do math. Get ready for it. Anyone here that is good at math that's listening, just keep in mind that I failed math a couple times in my life. So a lot of this is rough estimates, and I tried my best. But anyway, so the Earth's diameter, it is 7,917.5 miles. So you got this big sphere from this point to this point, which if you're watching on YouTube, you will understand. Otherwise, just picture a circle, and like at the widest point, it is 7,917.5 miles. So Earth's diameter, 7,917.5 miles. And then 400 miles on either side of that diameter is where the lowest point of their ocean begins. So like we've drilled into the earth, it's 400 miles into the earth, and that is their sea floor, basically. And then we can kind of estimate using our sea level of the lowest point of our ocean that we know of being 7 miles. So really, you have the opportunity for their atmosphere. So basically, if you're looking at the diagram of the hollow earth, which I will either insert here or include in an Instagram post, it basically looks like two contact lenses, if you can think about it that way. They're facing each other, and there's like a thick crust on either, and then you've got the inside world here that's hollow, because duh, hollow earth theory. So really, you have room between the lowest point of their sea level on one side to the next side of 7,105 miles from side to side. So really, given the fact that our atmosphere is only 22 miles, you've got more than enough room for there to be vast expanses of sky within the planet. So, given all that, we've set up the scenario for us to have this world. Again, this is all a bullshit theory. But given, let's pretend. We're pretending, okay? So, you have to think then, well, we get our light from the sun, it would be dark AF in there. But there's another theory to this, that smack in the middle of that hollow earth cavern is a sun-like star. So like it would be a small star, but it would still be giving off light, and that's what gives light off to the inner world. And they just don't have darkness. So a popular theory actually to legitimize this is that per our current version of the Earth's makeup, where there's like a molten core and then an iron ball in the middle of that, hollow earthers theorize that the speculated iron ball is actually the star that is referenced here, and that molten lava, the reason that we think it's molten lava is because we can sense, based off of seismographs or whatever, that there is some sort of liquid substance, and we've just assumed and theorized that that is magma. But per hollow earth, the iron ball is a star, and that liquid is actually oceans. So that's, yeah, sciencey bit. So that was a lot to take in.
So wait, I have questions.
Yeah, yes, please.
So when you're describing this, I'm assuming that like people are thinking that all of like the flora and fauna are basically like upside down. So instead of being like on the outside, it's like basically like we're butt to butt with these creatures, and then it's like there's a star on the inside that's radiating out, and then is what I'm picturing.
Yeah, that's basically exactly it. So let's say that you had a telescope that would allow you to see 7,000 miles. Theoretically, if you're standing on one side of the hollow earth and you have a telescope, you would be able to see the people standing on the other side, like waving at you. Like it's,
Okay.
yeah, but we are, like you, as you said, on the outside, we would be butt to butt with that world. Yeah.
So they're like convex? I don't know.
Yeah. So whereas our
we're
world,
concave.
when you look at the sphere, it would be going one way. So we see like past the horizon, theirs would be curving up, whereas ours kind of curves around, if that makes any sense.
So kind of like the proposed spaceships that are basically just like a big like donut.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where like they have
people actually
living.
do. Hollow earthers describe the shape as a donut. So on the inside of the donut is where the hollow earth is. Obviously, we're a sphere, so that'd be a lot bigger. But so as far as my research goes, that's kind of where it stops. Although, fun fact, apparently that's where Godzilla and King Kong came from, the hollow earth. So it's got to be true. Mm-hmm. Also, okay, so if you look on Google Earth, you can see that like satellite version of the Earth. If you try to scroll up to the very tippy top of the North Pole, it's not available. You can't see the tippy top of the North Pole. I'm just saying, maybe they're hiding it from us. Also, if you live in Kentucky, apparently the Mammoth Caves in Kentucky are an entrance, because it is like 400 miles worth of like cave systems, and they're not all charted yet. So allegedly, if you go to the Mammoth Caves and you keep walking and walking and walking, you'll eventually get to the Hollow Earth. So give that a try.
I think there's another location that I was looking at, or not looking at, but I was watching a documentary about like one of the earliest human skulls found in like Mexico, and like a cave system. And there's like another cave system down there, kind of like on the Yucatan Peninsula, that is kind of like that, where it's like very, very deep, but there's like a bunch of just like prehistoric animal bones in it.
Well, this is like a big theory too in the Aztec culture, is that there was like a species of people that were giants that, emerged and imparted on them wisdom or whatever, and then fucked off back into the earth. So I don't know, it's kind of wild to think about. And really, if you go on those subreddits, like the theories and like supposed evidence that people come up with, like it is compelling, and it does kind of make you like wonder a little bit. But this also is going to be just like off the top of my head. I was listening to a podcast about it. There is an account, again, it was written as like a first-hand account from some guy, but it's probably just like a fantasy novel ramblings of a guy that probably had maybe like a mental illness or delusions. But essentially, this was like late 1800s, early 1900s. This guy and his dad, they were Scandinavian. They were on a fishing boat, and they were like, what if we just set our sails due north and we just go on like the most epic adventure of our lives. So they're like, yeah, fuck it. We, have no regard for our family or our wives or our livelihood. So let's just do it. Let's just set the sails north and let's just go. So they do that. They set their sails north and they're sailing for weeks and weeks, and they get stuck in a squall eventually, and they get disoriented. And when their boat comes to like a settle, they realize that they are somewhere where it's like a lot warmer. The waters are calm. Everything looks like gigantic and abnormal. And so they take their little fishing boat and they're just like, fuck, where are we? They're just keep sailing down the world. And then eventually they come across this big vessel, and it's like a huge ship, really gigantic, and really, compared to the technology they had, it was very advanced. So the people that they come across on this ship, they're giants. They're tall, like 10 to 12 foot tall people, and they're all good looking, apparently. All had facial hair. They sounded just like human beings, but very tall. And so they like welcome them aboard very peacefully. And allegedly, this man and his father, they lived with these people for 2 years, and they learned their language and kind of just like assimilated their culture, and then just traveled around basically the Hollow Earth via like a monorail system is how he described it in, when he was writing this account before monorails were a thing. But he described this like high-speed electric train in which he would go visit like other parts of the Hollow Earth. And then he went to go meet the leader. And the leader was like, well, do you want to stay here or do you want to go home? We can make either happen. It's totally up to you. And so eventually they do decide that they're going to go home. So while they're arranging the trip, I should also note that apparently everything in the Hollow Earth is gilded in gold because it's such like a, high naturally occurring resource. Everything is just golden and covered in gold. And also that the females are just like radiating like beauty and wisdom. Apparently they're like the healers and protectors. But anyways, so this dude and his dad, they are getting ready for their journey home. The giant people, they're like, here, take as much gold as you want, load up their ship with gold, and they set them on their path. So they go boop, pop back out of that North Pole hole. They are sailing back home. Eventually their ship crashes, and unfortunately the dad perishes. All the gold is lost. This guy, he is rescued by who fucking knows, but he's rescued by someone, and then he goes back to his family, and he says like till his dying day he regrets having left the Hollow Earth because he lost all his gold and everything. But anyway, I'll have to find the name of that guy in that book, because like honestly, as
it's
a
like
fantasy,
Journey to the Center of the Earth, isn't it? Like
it sounds very similar to. And actually I think that movie and or book were based off of this guy's quote unquote firsthand accounts of having gone to the center of the earth. But apparently they're a peaceful society down there, and they're just chilling, being beautiful giants. So yes, that was a 38-minute ramble of me talking about the Hollow Earth. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, because that was really scatterbrained, but you're welcome. Next week, flat earthers. Just kidding, we're not doing flat earthers.
we're not
Yet.
even going to justify that with a response.
Nope. Although, is it any more or less ridiculous than... You know what? Actually, in the grand scheme of things, I think Hollow Earth sounds a lot more plausible than Flat Earth.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds, I don't know. I feel like Hollow Earthers are like the liberals, and the Flat Earthers are just like...
The Flat Earthers are the people that probably voted for Donald Trump. Anyways, yeah, that's Hollow Earth, guys. You're welcome. Please, someone needs to go on Reddit and just like be with me on this rabbit hole, because it's fucking wild. Some of the things and you know what's kind of crazy to me too, though, is the reason I feel like people get so invested in this is because we really don't know what's going on down there. Like, we've drilled, as I mentioned earlier, only 8 miles down to our surface. We don't have the technology or desire to go to the bottom of the ocean. We just don't know what's down there. So I think when people are faced with like a mystery like this, where we just don't know and don't have the actual facts, it's easy to go on these crazy like Hollow Earth tangents.
Well, and I'm kind of picturing, like, you know, those, like, standalone terrariums that, like, are totally sealed, but, like, they're their own ecosystem and, like, are totally self-sustainable. Like, that's kind of what I'm picturing.
Mm-hmm. It's plausible, guys. It's not real, because I'm not crazy, but it's plausible.
But you might be a little crazy.
I might be a little crazy. After this week, after having looked into all this stuff, I might be a little bit crazy. I want to interview someone that's like an
Who like
actual hollow earther. I need to hear their take on this.
vehemently believes it.
You want to know what's funny too is when my dad was here this weekend, I caught him watching episodes of Ancient Aliens. I'm like, oh, that's where I get that from. I get it. So that explains it.
I feel like that's something that my dad would just be like, I can't get into that because that stresses me out. That's where I get that from.
Yeah.
He's just like, I'm just going to sit and watch TikTok videos and laugh at it. But
oh, Jesus. Let's do tarot time. Oh, I forgot to mention, too. We're going to throw this in as a fun fact before tarot time. Apparently, so there's a theory amongst hollow earthers that the sun from their planet is actually... so both the sun and the gases escaping from the North and South Pole is what creates the Northern Lights. So.
Okay, that's kind of a cool one, though.
Can't leave that one out.
Okay. So, tarot time.
Tarot time.
To start off this week, I pulled the Star, which is like, this is like hope, serenity. Like she looks pretty peaceful in her little water bath. Also, she naked. The next card I pulled is the Empress reversed, which the Empress reverse, that's like neglect or like resistance or like disconnection. It's a very like anti-motherly energy, like not nurturing, but like neglectful or like kind of toxic motherly energy. So it's like, I think while you may feel like inspired, there's also this energy that's kind of like toxic that's coming in from like a very feminine source. And then the next card I pulled is the Ten of Wands reversed. This is like relief or simplification, or like immaturity. So this kind of can tie into that negative maternal energy where you're like reacting to this toxic maternal energy with like immaturity or like, well, I'm not going to do that just because you said so. So fuck you, man. And then I pulled the Wheel of Fortune reverse, which is like chaos or like bad luck. The next card that I pulled is the Page of Swords. So Page of Swords, this one is like clarity. So it's kind of tying back into the Star where it's like you have this like clarity and like inspiration. I think to get through the period of like chaos or like bad luck, like you kind of have to be your own good luck is I think what that's kind of saying. But I think once you do that and like make your own luck, then you'll have a period of prosperity. So that's what this Seven of Pentacles is. Like you cultivated your own good luck, you cultivated your own prosperity. So
go you.
I think that's a good tarot time for this week.
Yeah, that's a good one. And on that note, now that I think last week we had a bad one, so this is good.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and wrap
No,
up.
I think last week was... No, it was bad. You're right. Never mind. I lied.
So that, my friends, is another episode of Cool Stuff and Chill. So we are glad you joined us. Yeah, and that's... I don't have anything else to add. Do you have any words of wisdom to impart on us here?
I guess watch out for interdimensional Nessies and Nazi penguins this week.
Yeah. Yeah, just be suspicious of any penguins you might come across. That whole St. Louis Zoo exhibit with penguins, maybe. Okay, crazy theory to end the episode off with. So, the penguins at the St. Louis exhibit, that is heinously small if you ask me, for the amount of penguins that live there. Maybe the reason they have these penguins in such a disgustingly small exhibit is because they're actually Nazi penguins. They are descendant of the Nazis. So they're like, well, we're just going to round you guys all up and put you in prison for the rest of your life because fuck Nazis. So Nazi penguins at the St. Louis Zoo, go visit them. And then don't harass them because we don't stand harassing penguins, but we do stand harassing Nazis. So take that with what you will.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, well, follow us on our socials. Link in the bio, link in the description, link in blah blah blah. You guys know the drill. If you don't, you're smart and you'll figure it out. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye.